This
population.
conference will now be recorded.
So this program is very unique to us for our first webinar on World Population Day, and we got overwhelming response from many participants across the country, right from senior professors to school students, and we witnessed registration from even volunteers, then freelancers, and even general public too, which shows that many people are keen to participate in the knowledge gathering activities. And we received more than 270 registrations till yesterday night. We thought of we restrict to 100 participants, but we don't want to disappoint any registrants, so we closed registrant and we allowed all registrants through this GoToMeet web platform. I thank Dinabandhu and the head of the department for taking initiative to organize such a webinar on this happy occasion. So I thank both of them for contributing as well as motivating us to do something better on this lockdown period. With this few remarks, once again I welcome all of you. I witnessed many of known people, but due to time constraint, I'm not able to pinpoint you by name. But I welcome all of you. Arun, now yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Balasubramanian, sir. Now the opening remarks would be delivered by Professor Sulochana Shekhar, Madam, Dean School of Earth Sciences, Head Department of Geography. Over to you, Madam.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Arun. It's really a great pleasure for me to invite all of you to this national level webinar. First, we thought as a small level, but when we floated this idea, really it attracted a huge audience. Thanks to every one of you for registering with us. And yeah, this is first time we are organizing this World Population Day at a grand level. What is World Population Day? When it started, all of you must have Googled, but still I have to give an opening remarks. I have to share some ideas behind this. So it was like 1987 when the world population reached 5 billion. To mark this 5 billion day, the demographer who was working in the World Bank initiated this idea, proposed this idea of a population day. So 1989, United Nations Governing Council, as per the resolution 45/216, accepted this and established this population day in 1989. And in December 1990, they decided to continue as an important event. Actually, this day is significant because it highlights the problem of overpopulation and raises awareness about these effects of overpopulation on the environment and overall development. It also talks about health problems faced by reproductive women and the importance of family planning, gender equality, poverty, maternal health, and human rights. So when I said it was on 1987, July 11th, we reached 5 billion. It is curious to know when it was 6 billion we reached and 7 billion we reached, like that, right? So after 12 years of 1987, 1999, 12th October, the world population reached 6 billion. Approximately, this is the day they have been recognized by UN. And similarly, after 12 years, it was again 2011, October 31st, we reached 7 billion. And currently, our population is almost 7.29, like that. It's going on 7.7972 billion. So that means the population is keep increasing, and we have to create awareness. And being geographers and demographers, it is our moral responsibility to create awareness among the populations, overpopulation, the issues related to it, and all. So every year they used to have a theme to celebrate this population day. In 2018, it was like family planning is human right. But in 2019, there was no such theme announced by UN. They wanted to accomplish all the leftover balance goals and objectives which was conducted during 1994 conference objectives. And this year, during this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, they announced the theme that safeguarding the health and rights of women and girls around the world, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. This is the theme of this year celebration. So we are here to create awareness and also to understand the role of migration and how it is affecting the population growth as well as other social economic developmental activities. We are here to listen from our Bhagat sir and take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to Bhagat sir for accepting our invitation. And on behalf of School of Earth Sciences, Department of Geography, Central Institute of Tamil Nadu, we are very grateful to you, sir. Thank you so much. And also once again, welcome all of you to this event. Thank you so much. Over to Arun.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much. Let me welcome the guest speaker, Professor R.B. Bhagat sir. He is currently the professor and the head of the department for the Department of Migration and Urban Studies, and he has got his master's in geography from Jawaharlal Nehru University with specialization in regional development, and then he earned his PhD in population studies from Bombay University and enrolled, which he has enrolled at International Institute for Population Sciences. His areas of interest include urbanization and right to the city, migration and development, demography of religion and caste, politics of demographic data, marriage and fertility, population and environment. And he is an active researcher in his field of expertise, and he has done so many projects in his field, and he is an active researcher, and he has been a resource person for many influential projects in his field, including ENVI Center on Population and Environment, which was funded by Environmental Information System, which is a program of Ministry of Environment and Forest, food security among tribal and non-tribal populations, and he has been a resource person for India Migration Initiative, which is a joint project by UNESCO and UNICEF. And he has published many research articles in very well-renowned peer-reviewed journals. He has more than 70 plus our journals. He has published more than 6 books and 20 reports, which are very very informative. And he has guided more than 16 MPhil students and 10 PhD students. And he is an active member in International Union for Science for Studies in Population, and he is an active member in Indian Association for Study of Population. With all this introduction, may I now invite Professor R.B. Bhagat sir to deliver his speech. Thank you, sir. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. So I'll start. So thank you for this invitation. And I am very thankful to Professor Sulochana Shekhar, Dean, School of Earth Sciences, and Dr. Arun Prasad, Dr. Bala Subramaniam, and faculty of Geography Department, Central University, Tamil Nadu. And I welcome all participants to this program. We are celebrating today World Population Day. As you know, every year on 11th July we celebrate. And the purpose of celebrating World Population Day is to make awareness. But sometimes it also happens that in making awareness, we try to create some sort of fear that population is growing and resources are shrinking. You find this type of presentation in several places. So that is, I think, not the correct view. Correct view is that we must look population in various dimensions. How population is related with resources, development, education, health, and broader planning, policy planning perspective. That is the concern of population. And as you know, population is growing. Characteristics of population is also changing. One of the fundamental of population characteristic is the age structure. So when population grows, life expectancy, mortality declines, fertility declines, there is a change in the age structure. And with this change in age structure, we have increasing population in the working age group, that is 15 to 59. Can you please mute all mics? And when mortality declines, fertility declines, and gradually this decline is accelerated, what we call it demographic transition. And with this demographic transition, age structure changes. And in the changing age structure, we find that the proportion of people in the age group 15 to 59, that is the working age group, increases. And that we call it, if it is increasing, we call it demographic dividend. And you know that this is the age group from where migration is taking place. Migration is a age sex selective process because young people do not get job where you are born. Jobs are available in other places, and therefore there is a inevitability of migration, which is age sex selective, which is closely related with demographic transition and demographic dividend. So in order to reap demographic dividend, migration is a opportunity. When migration takes place, there is a urbanization. Settlement grows in size. Settlement grows not in size but in characteristics. And as characteristics of settlement changes, then we divide some settlement as urban and some settlement as rural. So in the changing characteristics of settlement, particularly the demographic characteristics, and demographic characteristics is the size, the density of population. Economic characteristics are the economic structure, what is working population, where the working population are engaged in agriculture or non-agricultural activity. And the social characteristics also changing, education, access to health care, and social composition also changes. Social composition means the urban area, and particularly when we divide urban area in terms of again size, which is the mega city, which is the metropolitan city, or large city, medium city, or small towns, then we find that the social composition of the places also change. So economic composition, demographic composition, and social composition. So demographic composition, we do not have problem in understanding. Density increases, and after some density, we call it urban. 5,000 is the criteria in Indian context by the Indian census. And size of the population, 5,000 and more. Density of population is 400 person per square kilometer. I'm sorry. And then size of the population is 5,000 person. And economic characteristic changes, that is agricultural occupation changes into non-agricultural occupation. The social characteristic changes in terms of composition of population, what sociologically called change in the primary group, change from the primary group to the secondary group. So agrarian society having primary groups like caste, religious group, but caste and religious groups are also there in urban area. But the difference between the two is that the caste and religion as a primary group in rural area having face-to-face contact. Daily interaction is there among the members of the group. That's why we call it primary group. And in secondary group, we don't have face-to-face contact. Somebody is living in one part of the city, another is living in another part of the city. Still, they are having bond in terms of caste or in terms of religious group, or there are other groups like trade unions are there, or the associations are there, some interest groups are there. So this type of new social group comes also. Why this type of new social group? Because of changes in the occupational structure. In rural area, occupational structure was more or less agricultural dependent. You don't have much diversity. But as economy diversifies, we have more and more people coming from different occupational groups. And this is economic diversity. And economic diversity creates a type of social diversity, where you have different types of people, cultural, religious, linguistic, all groups. So why I am emphasizing this thing? Cities are the forms of one form of urbanization. Urbanization is a process where settlement transforms from rural to urban. And some settlement we call, bigger settlement we call city. The size of the population may vary. Sometimes in Indian context, we propose 1 lakh and more population as a city, and 5 million and more as a mega city, and 1 million and more is million plus city. So diversity, as size increases, you have economic diversity increasing, social diversity increasing, all sorts of diversity increasing. So the outcome is that cities are heterogeneous area. Diversity is the hallmark of cities. We cannot imagine city without diversity. And this diversity is fed into by the process of migration. Cities are also growing through natural increase, but natural increase, along with natural increase, migration plays greater role in the growth, economic growth of the city, or in terms of social composition and other aspects of the city's dominance. So this is one thing to be understood. We cannot understand city without diversity. And all sorts of diversity will be there. Now, if you want homogeneity, that city should be homogeneous. Why I am telling you this thing? Because this is somewhere the debate coming in the country. Do you want diversity or do you want homogeneity? The group of people will say, no, we want to homogeneity. And therefore, there are certain political processes, political agenda. But when we look at development process, and when we try to link development process with city, and cities are very important in development city. We cannot imagine development without having the role of the city. This has become more important after industrial revolution in West European countries, and that starts from the middle of the 18th century. So urbanization were earlier also there in medieval time, in ancient time, urbanization were there. Many of you know that Indus Valley civilization was an urban civilization, something 2000 years before BC. And later on also in Buddhist period, during the time of 6th century to 6th century BC, there was second wave of urbanization. And at that time, we have Janpadaj, Mahajanpadaj, and that India has a glorious history in that period. We have medieval period where forts, palaces, army barracks, all these played very important role in the process of urbanization. And in the modern period, with industrialization, industrial city grew. Industrialization created urbanization. And urbanization was the product of migration. And in the West, particularly in the West European country, migration was a very, very strong phenomenon. During the Industrial Revolution, after the Industrial Revolution, until the first half of the 20th century, migration was such a strong phenomenon that villages has been depopulated. So people migrated to village, migrated to cities. Cities started growing. Cities started becoming bigger, and villages depopulated. Villages declined, disappeared even. Now, European people have not only opportunity of migrating from rural area to urban area, but also they have opportunity of immigrating abroad. So British people were there all over the most of the part of the world. And through migration, if you go little before in history, starting from 16th, 17th century, now this migration process created new world, like United States of America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. These are the new countries which had not more than 500 years of history. But we as a country, we have a long history. India has a long history. But in each phase of history, there has been migration. There has been role of places. There has been role of cities and towns. So it is a historical importance to understand. It is not only geographical, but one should be interested in the historical role of cities and towns in shaping economy, in shaping politics, and shaping society. So during the Industrial Revolution and after that, a new type of city, a modern city, grew up as a product of economic development and also product of migration. And this has created a type of increasing size of the city, diversity within the city, and this diversity again to be linked with innovation and creativity. Cities are also centers, not only diversity, but creativity and innovations. That's why cities are dominated. And if you see from where the economic growth coming, from where the GDP is coming, you find now in India 70% GDP is coming from cities and towns, which harbors only 31% of the population. Agricultural contribution is just 14%. So cities and towns are playing very important role in economic development, in creating conditions of innovations and creativity. So I'm trying to emphasize the role of the city, role of urbanization in economic development. Now, then what is the factor that creates the condition of economic development within city? That is the condition of agglomeration. Cities are agglomeration. And what is agglomeration? Agglomeration means concentration of economic activities and concentration of people. So when people are getting concentrated, economic activities are getting concentrated, we have agglomeration economies. Agglomeration creates agglomeration economies. Economies means we are saving our input is less and output is more. It happens because we have cluster of activities. We have access to credit, you have access to manpower, you have access to skilled scientific knowledge, so many, and markets also, because number of firms are concentrated, density of firms also increases. So it creates a condition of economic growth in the industrial sector, in the service sector. Then it has demographic implication. The size will increase, density is going to increase. So size and density, then we have a lot of discussion on this aspect. The city size is increasing. Is it sustainable? Density is increasing, very high density. It is sustainable? What is then how we can look at size and density? Theoretically speaking, size and density are good. And if city is a agglomeration, then size and density are the attributes of that agglomeration, and it is conducive for economic growth. Studies also show that as size increases, productivity increases, income increases, employment opportunity increases, everything increases. And there is also a study shows that if size doubles, 50%, 15% income increases, 15% employment increases. But what is happening in our popular narrative? I will come to that point, that size is increasing, density is increasing, is it sustainable? So that's a point that I will come to that point. So density, another factor is the distance. In agglomeration, not only density increases, but distance is reduced. So distance when reducing, transportation cost is declining. Inputs and outputs are both available nearby. So it is another factor, distance, density and distance. So density, distance are product of urban agglomeration, and it is increasingly associated with city, size of the city. That's why I find the bigger cities are dominating. India has 8,000 cities and towns, but we have 53 million plus city. Out of 53 million plus city, we have 8 mega city. 8 mega city means 5 million and more. I am giving figure based on 2011 census. So these cities are the control and command of Indian economy. This is not happening in India, but it is happening in the global scale also. And there are global cities which are controlling global economy. New York, London, Paris, Beijing. These are few cities which are called global cities, and global cities are controlling the global economy. Wealth is concentrated. Income is higher in cities. So if you compare income of urban, within urban, what is happening in bigger city, what is happening in the smaller city, towns or rural area, you find this type of gap. With increasing size of the city, you find things are economically getting better off. So then this is density, distance, and there is another category called division. Division means what are barriers? There may be, these are related with policies. Policies may be taxation or other types of movement of goods and services like GST reforms and etc. So those are other areas which are, but that is subsumed under this division. But these three D, density, distance, and division, are associated with the process of urbanization, associated with the process, with the emergence, and with the role of the city. In other words, city provides some sort of matching in the labor market. Where is demand and where is supply? So there is a matching. There is a sharing of information, sharing of other various things, knowledge, information. So we have matching, we have sharing, and you have learning. All these places are, all these characteristics are possible within the city. So therefore, cities are symbolized as a places where development takes place. They are engines of development. And with this economic development, we have also economic diversity within the city. Economic diversity means occupation. Number of occupations are generated within the city. And the social diversity. And therefore, this social diversity, there are political processes, there are conflicts, other things, how political processes manages the city, that becomes another area of political space, urban space influencing political space, urban space influencing social space. So this is what is that role of the city. But then problem is that now, when we look at from the point of view of sustainability, how long this can be sustainable, or why there are certain problems within the city. For example, why there is a slum, why there is an inequality in urban area, so, or environmental degradation, air pollution, etc. all these. So these are the questions we are not, although income is rising, economic growth is taking place, but a large part of the city having slum population. A large part of the population is working in informal sector. And this informal sector is consisting of migrant workers who are coming from rural area and working in urban area, getting just 10,000 rupees per month, even less than that. They don't have access to housing, they don't have social security, they lose their political rights at the time of voting. They are not able to go to their places, respective places, and go for voting. So they lose they are excluded politically, they are excluded socially, migrant workers. Why this type of problem happening? Environmental degradation taking place. And also, cities are, whether cities are able to create balanced regional development. Is it able to create, generate more trickle down in economic geography and economics? This is many times argued that growth is taking place and growth, there will be trickle down, but trickle down doesn't take place. So what happens? There is a backwash impact, siphoning out the resources, talent, and manpower. There is a siphoning out from the hinterland, from the rural area. Backwash effect becomes stronger. And cities, in fact, although it is generating income and growth, creating inequality. And therefore, inequality is fundamental reason why cities are not sustainable. And we have seen the situation during the pandemic that when lockdown was declared, a large number of migrant workers were thrown out of the city. Cities were not resilient to absorb them. And the figures are very, very glaring, very, very huge. About government sources say that 12 million people from cities have moved to rural area by train and buses. Many have walked down. They return by cycle or private vehicles. Figures will be somewhere close to 25 million. And these migrant workers on the whole in urban area will constitute about 80 million people. When I say migrant worker, those who are circulating. I am also a migrant. Some of you are also migrant. We are not counted in that. Because we are permanent migrant, we are included in the city, and therefore we don't have problem. But those who are circulating from rural to urban or cities, actually they are the temporary migrants. They have not settled in the city because it is very difficult to have access to housing. They don't have a residential proof, identity proof, and they are losing their many rights. And since they were vulnerable, pandemic came and they were displaced. They were thrown out. This was a forced migration, forced return migration. But this was very huge, unparalleled in history of India. And we can only compare what has happened during the time of partition of the country in 1947, when about 15 million people have crossed the borders from this side to that side, when country was divided into two countries. This time it will be somewhere 25 million, much larger than the figure what comparable at the time of partition. So this is what happening. Cities are not able to absorb migrants. Migrants remain excluded from the social security program. They are denied their rights, and they are denigrated also, that these migrants are creating problems. Problems in the sense that when there is a problem in the city, whether it is environmental degradation, whether it is job crisis or crime, or this time the pandemic, you can see the migrants are spreading the disease. So denigrated also. But issue is that they are the victims. And this victimhood and vulnerability is the product of what city produces and what city gives to them. And in fact, if you see city making of the city has been there in most of the part of the world and in our country also through the process of migration. And migrant workers, they have played very important role in this process, in the making of the city. This creation of inequality, creation of dispossession, deprivation, and the urban problems that we see today, where city is not sustainable in spite of huge wealth in the city, should be looked from the perspective of the role of capital. How capital is invested, how returns are generated, means how capital accumulation takes place in the city. and capital accumulation takes place in the city, capital moving from one circuit to another. When there is a no higher return, capital moves from that sector to another sector. To give you example, now we have entered an economy which is post-industrial economy. Our industrial sector contributes 20 to 25% only. Rest of the income or growth coming from service sectors or non-industrial sector. Capital moved from industrial to non-industrial, and particularly to the construction sector, to the real estate. And cities are produced through built environment. Now, built environment, as a geographer, we know many things about that, but we know that how land use is changing. Land use, land cover is changing. So built environment expanding. But what is their mechanism behind the built environment? The mechanism behind built environment is that it generates capital. Capital is invested more and more in the built environment. Cities are expanding. So what is urbanization in today's term? Urbanization in today's context is expanding built environment, expanding construction. So urbanization means construction. And you can see in your city and elsewhere, and you see the massive construction takes place. And with this construction, real estate and land value and housing, etc. And these housings are creating wealth. Not only it creating wealth, it hides wealth also. Black money also is getting hidden. The built environment also degrades environment, the natural environment, the water body. It encroaches into the water body, it encroaches into the forest, it encroaches into the agricultural land. Why? Because it creates capital accumulation. And if you read some of the works of David Harvey, how built environments expands, how capital accumulation takes place, how urbanization is creating some sort of inequality, you will find is using two more aspects, two more terms, that accumulation by disposition. Sometimes the legal system also helps in expanding the built environment. So agricultural land will be converted into non-agricultural land, water bodies will be encroached, and small farmers will be thrown. And this is some sort of accumulation by disposition. So this urban dynamics takes place. So urban dynamics is not for the income security or employment or for healthcare needs of the people, but it serves the needs of the capital and capital accumulation. So this way, if we want to make cities sustainable, this process needs to be stopped somewhere. This capital accumulation, built environment, creating environmental destruction should be stopped somewhere. Now, then capital also moves to, not only it remains in the built environment, in creating built environment, but it also goes to the financial sector. And you know what is financial sector? Financial sector means banking sector. Financial sector means insurance sector. Financial sector means stock market. And where this is a credit market. And this is the sector where money makes money and without producing goods and services. When money makes money and without producing goods and services, then what is going to happen is the financial crisis. and you must have seen and read during last 10 years time, 10 or 15 years time, several times we hear there is a financial crisis. Financial crisis is not an economic crisis. It is a financial crisis, this crisis of the credit market. Credit has been given more and more in expecting that money is going to multiply. It multiplied. But after all, sometimes it crashed. So this is also happening in urban process, urban dynamics. Urban dynamics is also part of that. Another important thing is happening in urban is in the city and urban is the creative destruction. Creative destruction means we are redeveloping something. We create certain roads and then after some time we dig the road and we rebuild the road. We make flyover and then say, no, this is a small flyover. You demolish this flyover, make a big flyover. Creative destruction. Now, what is the implication of this creative destruction is that the capital remains trapped in the urban space. Capital is not moving to a rural area. There is no trickle down because urban space gives us a lot of return. And here it is also innovated a new type of mechanism that is called creative destruction. You destroy it and then you rebuild it, and then capital will be within the urban space. So capital will be in Mumbai and Delhi or Chennai only. It will not move to other area, although government will give certain incentives, but still capital is not moving because that returns are low. So implication of this that our rural urban divide is increasing. Our cities are acting in such a way that it is creating problems within the city, but it is not to be understood only in ecological terms. Our urban theories are very biased towards ecological theory. What I don't mean ecological theory means the environment. This ecological theory means survival of the fittest, natural selection. Ecological theory is a Darwinian theory. It's a social theory which explains that the bigger will be bigger will be bigger and bigger, wealthy will be wealthier and wealthier, poor will be poorer and poorer. This is ecological theory. So when cities become bigger and bigger, cities becoming richer and richer, that is true. Economic growth is there, and therefore inequality is also going. Environmental degradation also taking place. People are migrating due to lack of job in the rural area to the urban area, working for just on the minimal amount. So this is creating not only within the city problem, inequality in the city, but between the urban hierarchy, the small city, small towns versus big city, and also for the rural area. So urban, peri-urban and rural-urban divide is widening. And with this rural-urban divide widening, we have regional disparity also. Regional disparity is also widening. So we have Eastern India on the one hand, rest of the India, others, the Western India, North India, South India, and Eastern India, which is marginalized. And if you see the income gap between Eastern India means the Eastern UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. This part, if you see this state where also tribal population resides, you will look at the income level, economic development, access to healthcare, access to education, and you see the Western India, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, and Northern India, Haryana, Punjab, Delhi, and Southern India, you find the disparities are increasing. So this disparity should be understood from the point of view of space and place. And space and place is closely linked, is being transformed by the process of urbanization, by the dominance of the city. Then what to be done? How we can make, the question is how we can make inclusive and sustainable city, how we can make inclusive and sustainable urbanization. This is the question. Now, point is that what is urban and what is city? Again, city is a relationship, or urban is a relationship between people and place. It is people who creating place, who are creating city. But the relationship between people and place has been disconnected. People are not producing place, but people are producing space. There is a production of space, but there is no making of place. That is, I think, biggest problem of sustainability. So who is producing space? Those who are interested in capital accumulation, those who are interested in creating wealth, they are producing space, and space becomes that it becomes certain built environment, and you will find that a lot of flats have been created, but nobody is there to live. So this type of disconnect, that we are producing urban space, we are not able to make urban place, and therefore place to be restored to the people. And how this can be happen? This is type of urban imagination. Sustainability doesn't mean that in the short run, okay, we will economize in fossil fuel, or we will economize in water resources. Yes, that is conservation. We can do conservation. But conservation is not something which can lead to sustainability. Technology can also help, okay, but how technology will be accessible, to whom it will be accessible? Solar energy is okay, environmental friendly. How much people are going to able to utilize solar energy? Is it be accessible to poorer people? Similarly, in healthcare facility, you see private healthcare or public healthcare, and in this COVID time, we have seen private healthcare has just disappeared. They fled away. Only public healthcare, public system is working, and they are helping. So, larger question of restoring people is the building of certain institution, empowering people, and restoring the place to the people. And that is the that paradigm that is now called is right to the city. Right to the city is a slogan, is a paradigm, is a philosophy, how to restore people to the city. City should be restored to the people. And there are various things to be done, but one need to understand the problem. It is not simply a problem of conservation. It is an issue of long-term reforms. It's a long-term institution making. So there are many things. Local democracy, first thing is that we must have local democracy. Who owns the city? You can look at Chennai. Who owns Chennai? Who is the custodian of Chennai? Who is custodian of Mumbai? Most of the government, central government claims, state government claims, local government is not available. So in this pandemic, you must have seen what is the role of the mayor, where is mayor role, corporators role, very little, because they are not empowered. Whereas they know more about what is happening in their neighborhood, who are the migrant, who are the poor, what is happening. They know everything, but they don't have say. So I think the 74th amendment to the Constitution, 73rd for the rural area, 74th, it should be implemented in letter and spirit. Then we must have bottom-up planning. We don't have bottom-up planning. We have top-down planning. And even we have abundant planning. We have projects. So we have different projects creating urban space where people are not there, people are not connected. Some facilities are given which people don't want, flyover passing through the neighborhood or something coming in the neighborhood which people don't want, but somebody else expert has created. There is a project coming. So we don't have this bottom-up planning where you need certain services, you need schools, you need hospital, you have corporation, you have neighborhood, you have sense of belonging to the place, ownership of the place, community formation. All these things are missing in urban area. So 74th Amendment, that is the issue of governance, local democracy, bottom-up planning. Planning should come from the below. And then this can make certain, and city is not for only capital accumulation. It is not a commodity. Sustainability demands that now we must understand city is not a commodity, that everything should be sold. Each parcel of land will be converted into built environment and sold. No, there should be need-based, what people want. So that sort of thing should be understood, and each city, there should be decentralized way of planning, and bottom-up planning should be integrated into state plan and all national plan. So these, I think, there were certain things coming, but then it disappears. The new things comes, and it disconnected from other things, and the sectoral convergence is not there. So one ministry is doing one thing, another ministry is doing another thing. So convergence under control and command of the local democracy. So if you see London or New York, who commands London and who commands New York? It is the mayor, under whom everything will be, there will be convergence, sectoral convergence. It is a transportation, or it is energy consumption, or it is protection of the environment, or the livelihood, or it's several things need to be converged. And this is type of political reform. So sustainability is not something issue of conservation or something related to human behavior, but it is a political question. How we architecture the governance of the city and the right to the city. If people are connected with place, then I think the city really is formed. And then role of the city will be also to bridge the rural and urban gap, and to take the impulse of growth from urban area to the rural area. So rural-urban divide can be bridged. City can help in urbanizing the rural area. So as urbanization, in the beginning I told urbanization, a lot of potential, good thing. But urbanization has created problem. But that problem can be solved through urbanization only, alternative urbanization, sustainable urbanization. And we need to then have planned urbanization of rural area. And planned urbanization, one of the planned example of planned urbanization was the vision of our ex-president Abdul Kalam, APJ Abdul Kalam, who gave the idea of Pura, providing urban amenities to rural area. What is this Pura? Pura is urbanization of rural area, providing connectivity, infrastructure. And then when rural area will urbanize without migration, it will create agglomeration, economies. And then you can expect that MSME can come into the rural area. or Manrega can be integrated. So this way, I think urbanization should be instrumental in rural development, bridging the rural-urban gaps, divide, and also bringing city at the core of human development. And that is what is the urban sustainable urbanization is, where migrants will be included, migrants will not be thrown out, because migrants will be part of the decision making. They will participate in the process of planning and governance. So this is what I like to submit. Sometimes it will look some very difficult, yes, difficult, but this is part of our urban imagination. We must imagine whether we can be able to convert or not able to convert. But right imagination is very, very essential to move forward. So I think I will stop here. And if there are some questions, then I can further explain and discuss. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your very informative lecture. So we have got a few questions from the participants. I would just share the screen for you, sir, and I read out one by one. So you please.
Yeah, sure. So, okay, just you can stop this first. Should I read or you are going to read?
I would read out, sir. I would share the screen
Okay.
also.
Yeah, that will be good. You read out, okay.
Yeah.
Is it ready, Arun, or shall I read the first one?
Yeah, it's ready. It's ready.
Yeah.
So the first question is from Mrs. Gandhimadi from Sri Meenakshi Government College for Women, Madurai, and her question is: how does labor migration affect the urban environment? Is there any strategy to attain sustainable urbanization?
Can you read again? Can you who asked this question?
Mrs. A. Gandhimadi from Sri Meenakshi Government Arts College for Women, Madurai, Tamil Nadu.
Can you read again? What is that?
Yeah, the question is: how does labor migration affect the urban environment? Is there any strategy to attain sustainable urbanization?
Okay, that's fine. This is, I think, popular narrative that migrants are coming, they are creating slums, and urban environment is degrading. You'll find this is popular narrative, but then one has to go into the deeper and see why slums are created. Migrants are contributing to economic growth in factory production, in informal sector they are contributing, but how much they are paid? Their subsistence amount. They are getting 300 to 400 rupees per day. How can they find a good accommodation? And therefore, all these things are related with larger issues of urban development, how cities to be produced. And blaming at a face value manifested characteristics, I think that will not be appropriate. One has to go deeper into see why slums are coming up, how much wages is there, how much profit is there. So this is, I think, bigger question. One need to go deeper into the economic process of the city, which I have elaborated in detail in my lecture. Okay, thank you.
You, sir. Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Lokesh Kant, Department of Geography, Central District of Tamil Nadu, and his question is: how to maintain the correct data of migrant laborers who are working in informal sectors in major cities of India? And the next question is, yes, sir. Please proceed. I will ask the next question later.
So this one, see, this is very migrants come in the city and live in certain neighborhood. Somewhere they are living. And if local democracy is there, local governance is there, municipal corporation is active, they can be registered. But thing is that municipal corporation doesn't have that type of responsibility. They are just engaged in providing certain services. They are not empowered. So this is the one thing, that if local bodies are empowered, they can do. Local democracy need to be strengthened. Decentralization, I think, can help in this type of thing. There are alternative ways of doing also when they are coming now with Aadhaar card or the financial inclusion, because many are not there with employer. They are working either casual worker or self-employed. So some mechanism can be established at a city level where migrants can register, they get identity card, but this should not be controlling like license Raj. In doing registration and giving identity, there may be harassment, there may be problem. So better we have to have a human approach, and if it is done at a municipal local body level, I think that is better. It should be done.
Thank you, sir. And the next question is again from Lokesh Kant, and his question is, how Bihar is dealing the situation of reverse migration during this crisis?
Yes, very, very, I think, serious problem for Bihar. Bihar has seen, officially government says 20 lakh people, 2 million people. But I think there will be more people. So that is one thing, that the people lost job and they return. Immediately they can't do anything, lockdown is there. Then Bihar is losing remittances. These migrant workers who were working in the city, they were sending money. Money was not very big, 2,000, 3,000 rupees per month. So it was just 30, 35,000 in a year. The amount was small, but this was great help for food security, access to health care, care of the aged parents, renovation of house, some investment in agriculture. So Bihar is going to, I think, further going on the down. Reverse migration has badly affected Bihar. Bihar needs a package from central government, a special package.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And the next question is from Dinabandhu Mahata, a PhD scholar of Department of Geography, University of Tamil Nadu. And his question is, what is the relationship between urbanization and labor migration?
Yes. So it's a very direct relationship. Urbanization and city provides job. There is a pull factor. So pull factor is there, and people don't have job in rural area. There is a push factor. But then all people in rural area don't migrate. There are people, first one person will migrate from the village, then there is a network, then he will bring another person. So basically urbanization is related with employment and pull factor. So city pulls, but everybody cannot be pulled. Those who have network, they can find job in urban area. Okay.
Thank you, sir. And the next question is from Ms. Shahnaaz Bashir, and her question is, how do social relations and access to healthcare shape migration decisions in times of pandemic and beyond?
Yes, social relations matter more. Social relations is you are part of the network, and network means you get cooperation from your friends, from your neighbor. So social relation, I think people are relying on social relation only. This is the time, pandemic actually, Indian people are now, those who facing problem, they get a lot of support from their neighbors, from their friends, from their relatives. So I think this is a great, something very positive I find here. Whereas there are many things lacking from the government side, because something has happened, we have not built something. So that's why Kerala model is being cited sometime. That Kerala has good local democracy. There is a network of people, that civil society is strong. There are self-help groups, political parties. They are having positive view of the migrants. All these factors are helping in Kerala to fight with the COVID. Social relation in Kerala is better. But in some places like Mumbai, Delhi, a lot of isolation, you don't know your neighbor, you don't have friends, family is very small, no income. I think then government support is coming occasionally 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 rupees. Cost of treatment is very high. So really, I think some support is coming from social. Social is very, very important, but that social should be also converted into political, and then changing the nature of the city and planning of the city. Okay.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Ms. Pooja Das, and the question is, how we solve the labor migration problem by sustainable development? If we look across India, there is an inequality between the states during this pandemic. So what steps should be taken for the migrant labor and their livelihood and jobs?
So now the basic thing is that we have to do two things in this country to make the economy move forward. One is that there should be demands of the goods and services, and for demand there should be income in the hands of the people. But the package that is announced, 20 lakh crore package, it is supply side. Money is will be given to MSME or to the business houses or to some other supply side. So this is one thing, the demand side is very important. So cash transfer to the migrant or the rural household is very, very important. Then we have to have long-term planning of creation of jobs. And that creation of jobs will be based on rural development. And the vision of rural development should be based on Pura type of, where there should be cluster of villages and around one urban center, creating urban rural complexes, provide connectivity, transport connectivity, healthcare facility, knowledge connectivity, electronic connectivity, internet, and then develop agro-processing industry, food processing industry, or whatever locally talent is available, local opportunity, that is local should be vocal. Local should be vocal in production, locally produced. And then it can be consumed locally. If there is a surplus, that can be traded to other places. So I think it is a strategy of rural development. And strategy of rural development is not should be confined to only credit, self-help group, or giving just money, but infrastructure, creating infrastructure, rural urban complexes in the form of Pura, and then advancing and establishing agro-processing industries, food processing, and whatever local opportunity of industrialization is there, rural industrialization should be promoted.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So the next question is from Vishak, and his question is, what is the role of space or time in sustainable urban development?
Role of space and time.
Yes, sir.
In sustainable development.
Urban development.
In urban development, yes, space time will become very important. We have to produce space, which is place. That point I am made, but I will explain further. Actually, place matters. We have to make place, because why place matters? Because we live and work and in places. Place decides about our access to resources, whether employment, access to healthcare, access to education, where we live, it matters. So, but we are not party in making the place. That is the problem. If we are living in certain place, we must have right to make that place. But you don't have right to make the place. Somebody else is making the place. And they are not making place, they are producing space. So space is very, very important, how space is produced and how it is connected with people. And when you have space, your time is produced by space. So it is called space time, space hyphen time. What is meaning of that? Time is a relative concept, whether your good time or bad time. If your space is good, your time will be good. If your neighbor is good, you are getting access to healthcare, free healthcare. You have access to education, not education as a commodity where you are not able to pay fees. Then your time is different. But if you are not able to pay fees, you are just moving from one hospital to another hospital, not able to get services, your time is different. You have torturous time, you have happy time. So time, actually space, time is part of the space. When space is produced, time is also produced. Time is not a separate concept than space. That's why it is called space time. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Ms. Sita Meena, and the question is, what are the important objectives of Pura approach that government should prioritize at this time of pandemic?
Yes. So Pura was a well conceptualized model or approach of rural urbanization. Rural area to be urbanized, but that urbanization is different urbanization. What is that meaning of urbanization? Urbanization means you get non-agricultural job. Okay, you are doing certain industrial activity, producing goods and services. You can get access to healthcare. You can get access to education. You can get access to playground. You can play, your children can play. All these things are coming in a space which is organized and produced in city, what you call urban. The same thing can be produced in rural area, but with no commodification. Space where we live and connect, it should not be commodity. And therefore, Pura, vision of Pura should be rural urbanization, or in other words, planned urbanization. So planned urban, how we urbanize provides education, connectivity, transportation. Transportation doesn't mean building of the roads. So what is now happening? Government builds the road and then they leave. But there are no buses. You provide buses also, roads are there, markets will be there, healthcare will be there, and it should be around some small town. So this is some sort of planned urbanization, rural urbanization, and there is an alternative word, in situ urbanization. In situ. That is the census town has shown recently. Some of the census towns are coming. So this is what urbanization without capital accumulation. Urbanization that provides the amenities, urban amenities to the rural people. That is what is the Pura's vision is and should be. But government changes and then Pura concept has been diluted, something It has become public-private partnership. It is brought in same model of what is happening in the big city. That cities are for profit, capital accumulation, wealth creation. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the another question from Dr. Narendra Shukla, and his question is there any relationship between unemployment, poverty, and population pressure with migration in the state?
Yes, it is. Of course, there is a relationship, but employment can be generated through economic growth. And economic growth, if that is coming with social justice, then it will also provide access to healthcare, and access to healthcare means access to reproductive healthcare, access to family planning. So now it looks that yes, population growth is the problem for unemployment. But in ultimate analysis, population growth and unemployment both are product of the economic system or economic processes. When you change the economic processes, neither there will be unemployment nor there will be population problem. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Can we move to next question?
Yeah, next question. Yes, sir. So the next question is from Mr. Mustafizur Rahman from AMU, and his question is how to measure the accessibility of infrastructural facilities in small town.
Access to infrastructural facility. That's access to infrastructural facility. So infrastructure means what? First is the transportation facility. So transportation, whether how far your bus stop is there, how much distance is there. So if transportation is there or not there, how many kilometers, so you can measure the absolute distance. Similarly, the absolute distance in terms of from your point, from your place to healthcare facility. But this is about the distance, physical. Suppose healthcare is there nearby in your place, but it is a private healthcare and it is not affordable to you. It is not accessible. So accessibility is physical, accessibility is economical, and accessibility is social. For example, social means suppose some facility is there, but it is confined to certain group of people. You are not allowed. So various ways we can see accessibility, but more important is the physical and economic. So these two aspects to be looked into in accessibility.
Thank you, sir. One last question. It is from Dr. Richa Tripathi, and the question is, what are the potential impacts of reverse migration and how can we reduce it?
Yes, there may be, it is a problem, apparently looks problem, but it can be opportunity also. It depends upon how state government, central government, local government, civil society come together and harness. But I don't think that this opportunity can be utilized, and some of the study shows, which is conducted telephonically, that 80 to 85% return migrants, they are likely to return back to the city. So very small proportion will remain in rural area. But then this situation can also be utilized as an opportunity. There are many people who are returning with a lot of skills. If they have lived in urban area, they have knowledge, they have information, they have skill. So this can be utilized, but are there scope of utilization? For example, village planning. Village planning is not there. One of the problem of development process in our country, we don't have village planning. If we don't have village planning, then how we are doing Manrega, MG Narega, Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme? Because this scheme is also connected with creation of rural assets. So if planning is not there, then when money is coming, some places are dig out, some places are filled up. We are not able to create roads or water harvesting, watershed development, or social forestry, or panchayat, construction of panchayat bhavans, etc. So it should be grounded in planning. So this can provide opportunity also, but it all depends upon how government is responding. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your informative lecture, and you have patiently answered many of the queries. Thank you so much for that. May I now invite Dr. Rakuti Grover, Assistant Professor, Department of Geography, Central University of Tamil Nadu, to deliver the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm really thankful to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present the vote of thanks today on the occasion of World Population Day, where our guest speaker, Professor R.B. Bhagat, is presenting. And first and foremost, I would like to thank Professor R.B. Bhagat from IIPS for his scintillating and informative talk. Sir, it's a pleasure to hear you. I met you long back in 2013 at IIPS while I started doing my PhD. I met you in your office, and it's so nice to see you today. And yes, sir. And thank you. You beautifully integrated all the concepts and the complexities of sustainable urbanization and how to bring about these concepts into reality. And I really liked your thoughts on urban imagination to bring about the sustainable urbanization. Thank you very much, sir, for sparing time for us today and giving your talk. I would like to thank the head of department, the Dean of Earth, School of Earth Sciences, Professor Sulochana Shekhar, who is the convener for the event, and Mr. Dinabandhu, the research scholar of our department, who initiated and this program. I'm very thankful for them for organizing this at a very large scale. Thank you so much. I would like to thank all the participants. That includes faculty members from various universities across India and other places. All the participants who have joined, the research scholars and students of CUTN. Thank you so much for attending and making this talk much more interesting by having a very long question-answer round. I would like to thank all the organizers, the faculty members who have been involved in organizing this event, from the Dean, Dr. Sulochana Shekhar, Bala Subramani sir, Arun sir, Dr. Venkatesham, and all the research scholars and students. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you very much for nice organizing this discussion and a lot of questions. I think hope I have been able to provide some answer, but still if you want to interact with me, you can write to me in my email. Okay, I will reply to you as far as possible. You know my email you can take, or in the IIPS website you can visit and can have my email. Okay, it's simple. rbhagat@iips.net, all is small. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks to all the participants.
Yeah, thank you so
We'll meet
much.
once again.
More than 60 participants continuously online. It was
Yes,
really a wonderful event. Thank you, organizers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. And the feedback form is already been shared in the chat box.